to talk about operational excellence with no code. I believe you're the Vice President of Innovation and Marketing, right? So amazing to see you using Creatio. And then we have your partner here as well, Gianluca, from Reply. So we're going to let Andy hold the conversation for us and learn more about our amazing customer. So Andy, off to you, sir.
All right. Thank you for having me. Apologies for being late. So as much as I like talking about customers, Mr. Donchuk likes talking about partners and held the other room, I think, 20 minutes over or so. Wow, that's bright light. I couldn't be more pleased than to be here today with this esteemed panel. In fact, I was super proud this morning when the left side of the room was being called out, and they said, is someone brave enough to stand up? And Rob and I saw it was you in the back. So thank you so much for that.
I felt like a guilt stare coming at me. He was like, someone ask a question.
That was amazing. Well, I think it'll be important just before we kick into specific questions about you, is that TopBuild as an organization, and first of all, I thank you for joining us. I know you came from the investor meeting. TopBuild's a public company. You are one of the leading manufacturer distributors of building supplies, insulation. I would love for you just to share with the organization here a little bit, all the folks here, what do you believe are some of the main drivers of the organizational success before we even talk about the specifics of the project?
Yeah, sure. I'm actually happy to correct you slightly. We are the number one.
I was tamping it down. You're correct.
I know. It's
number
cool.
one with a bullet.
It's cool. We just did come off of our investor day yesterday, so we're feeling a little bit hype about ourselves. No, I'm just kidding. But we are the largest installer and distributor of insulation in North America, and our organization is 400 plus locations across U.S. and Canada, and that means we are super fragmented. And so part of our overall culture, which sort of frustrates centralized tools like the ones we're talking about, but also is sort of a key to our success, is this local empowerment and distributed network. And so keys to success, I think, is the question. A lot of our focus from a business model perspective is how to allow our local teams, including sales, service, local decision-making, but yet keep the right guardrails in place when it comes to those important things like HR, finance, legal stuff, as well as things in important process areas like sales operations, areas like that. So how do we balance that empowerment and freedom to do what they need to do and feel like they own their business, and yet have enough structure to achieve the synergies that we want to nationally? And that's a critical piece of our business model that I think also is a fair segue into what we're talking about here as well.
Well, perfect. So I will make up for my lack of stating number one.
Terrible.
No, it was good.
Terrible.
And I will say that in addition, you're ranked as one of the fastest growing Fortune 1000 companies on that list. And so I can't imagine being in that position and not having to focus on growth and innovation, which I think, so when we see your title as an emerging one, I think we're seeing more of is someone who's literally responsible for that. What are some of the kind of top aspirations or initiatives that you see for the future to kind of maintain that growth? And I'm sure we'll be seeing you a year from now maybe on the Fortune 500.
Yeah, I think, first of all, when you have the word innovation in your title, it's a little bit of a setup, because everybody has their own idea of what that means. And in construction, it's not known to be a particularly innovative industry. It's relatively laggard in some ways, but there's a lot of movement coming through. And so I think for us, in terms of maintaining our trajectory, my team has the same objectives that everybody else in the business has, which are to improve our operational efficiency, to create top line, market expansion. And so how can we do that? We don't have different goals from the rest of the business. So the way we're thinking about this is continuing to leverage digital tools, product and process innovation within our business as competitive differentiator, because across the land, the way we're thinking about this is continuing to leverage digital tools, product and process innovation within our business as competitive differentiator, because across the landscape in construction and building products, there is less of that than in other industries. So if we can activate that successfully, any of those types of things, we're going to continue to have, differentiated advantage there. So those are a lot of the things we think about. We're also thinking about just, not specifically related to what we're talking about here, but advances in material science. There's a huge expansion in building and energy code, which affects us greatly in that, we are a inherently sustainable business in terms of majority of our products are recycled or recyclable. And so we're focused a lot as well on ESG and how to drive innovation through, those areas. So I would say that combination of things.
I appreciate that. Now, I have a list of questions here, but I want the audience also prepping a few questions yourself so you can ask the audience. This next question I'll open up to both of you, right? So obviously you mentioned there's new trends, there's advancements, technology, both obviously we think of technology from the software side, but obviously in the materials side. What are some of the other trends that you see shaping in any of these ways, the construction industry as a whole at the moment? And I'll open that to both of you if you both have a thought on that.
Yeah, I can give our perspective about more the software side of this thing. And we embrace the idea of, a new modern approach on software development. This should be in some way driven by more, intuitive platform like the one Creatio that has been adopted for this project with TopBuild, where you have artificial intelligence and machine learning that will do most of the things that used to be done by traditional developers in the past. So more and more we see our people very much focus on business process, business analysis, less than pure code development. And this is what we call the next generation software development life cycle. That is the place where, the new developer will move more rapidly from low code to no code. And we believe that the first context in which we are seeing automation is the information technology itself. We as a company, we are a traditional, we are a system integrator, we are a software company, but we're moving very fast into the direction of this new trend of technologies.
Yeah, I would say kind of leveraging what you said, in construction broadly, there's absolutely an infusion of digital tools, particularly software tools. I spent 20 years in tech, IoT, telecom, so I'm a lot more used to software than I think a lot of folks in my industry. But there's a huge infusion happening right now to kind of, operate off of what you were saying, Gianluca, that people in this industry don't have a natural attachment to software and technology tools. So you're seeing a huge growth in how, for example, to connect between architectural, efforts, engineers, and speccing for material. How do you, kind of tie all that together through a tool, or business process efficiency, because it takes so much human intervention to get a building built. Coming into this industry, I've been absolutely amazed to be on job sites and just watch what it takes to get things built. Especially here, a lot of our friends and partners here are from Europe or elsewhere. It's very different in Europe. There's a lot of mechanization there for a bunch of different reasons. But here, it takes a lot of work to get a building built. And so I think there are places where software is soaking up some of those gaps, particularly in planning, in financial, in processing, building permits, things like that. Our area is in the built world. We go into places and put physical, material into walls, and there's not a huge amount of change in that space in the US. And so for us, we look at software as efficiency improvements, process improvements. How do we get there faster, win it faster, produce it better, things like that. So I think that's the place we, as largely a service provider, whether we're selling or installing, we think much more about technology from that side of things, which I think fits in well to what Gianluca said, because people don't have the experience set to develop these things on our own. We need, I see Marco's like, yes, we know this, because we're doing it for you. But I think as we start to take on, the platform, we have a better chance of maintaining it ourselves because of the simplicity, behind it. And I think increasingly in construction, that's the structure of the tools that are needed, because you don't have groups of engineers sitting waiting, developers sitting waiting. There are not people who have these jobs in majority of construction businesses.
I appreciate that. So I know I can see in the audience too, I see some folks from customers and in different industries as well. So I think it would be helpful to understand what factors led TopBuild as an organization to digital transformation. And then in that journey, I know when we first met, there had been some other starts when it came to CRM and some other areas. What led I get not as a self-serving question, but I'm curious what led to the selection of Creatio in that as well. So kind of a two-part question, given that I can see, so we got some folks from banking and some other industries as well that came to this from a different mindset. I think it's helpful to understand your perspective.
Yeah, so we're the share leader in residential, commercial, industrial, in the areas in which we play, and so we've been able to run full steam ahead without sort of difficulty. And I think as we look at, you guys know from the business, every incremental gain in share, it's incrementally tough to grab that. And while we think our service is the best, our product selection is the best, our scale is the best, but we need to continue to kind of ratchet that up. And so we looked at sales productivity, again, with that local footprint that I mentioned before, as a potential important chasm to kind of bridge a little bit more effectively. And yeah, I've been with the business about 3.5 years, and I inherited hey, can you try this again? And I said, well, what does again mean? Well, we had this name brand thing a while back. We had this one, we had that one, we had this one. I'm like, and they all didn't work out? They're like, yeah, we tried CRM a bunch. And I was like, great, now I'm going to take this on. So, we looked at this as, okay, if we want to improve sales productivity, what is it that's keeping these other efforts from having worked? And one of them was about the data, and we've worked a lot with Reply and our additional partner who focuses on construction data to streamline and simplify the data itself. That's been a huge piece, and Reply helped us to really build the pipeline into Creatio that takes that simplified data. So that was one thing that drove us to really tackle this differently, was we need to approach the information that's getting put in, which is something that hadn't been done in our group before. And then the second piece, I think, is related to why we chose Creatio, is we of course looked at all the name brands out there, some of which we had already subscribed to in the past. And I think the comments earlier today around off the shelf versus giant multi-year, multi-million-dollar custom build, I think that was the perfect, bless you. I think that was the perfect way to describe that spectrum. It always does feel that way, that you can either just take what someone has and you try to force your square peg into that round hole, or you need to invest more than I'm able to get my boss, our CEO, to agree to. So we found, I think, with Creatio, and I'll admit, I was speaking with Catherine earlier, and we did not know of Creatio before we heard of them through Gartner, and went and took a look at the solution and said, wow, this might be a really appropriate middle ground. And what we liked about it was more focus on the Legos. I know that might be a little bit parochial reference to what you guys, the complexity and the beauty of what you're building, but we looked at it as like Jenga blocks, that, okay, we can take these pieces but not these pieces, and maybe later we'll add those pieces back. And I think that's ultimately why we chose Creatio, because we felt that given our prior, look, sometimes we fail at things, and that's how we learn what next to do. And I think we learned from all of that we needed something more flexible that could be more customized without us having to do all the heavy lifting. So, and I think ultimately that's what we found with it as well.
Excellent. Thank you for that. Well, so for obviously full disclosure, you're still in your deployment phase right now, right?
Yeah.
And so I'd like to hear from both of you, right? So because we have both customers and partners represented, I think you both have a different perspective on this. Would you say that the no-code approach is accelerating, given what you've seen with other projects that you've worked on, the journey for you? And if so, kind of how, from both of your perspectives, like from a customer and from an implementer?
What I can tell you here is that for sure we believe that, and this is the true example is with Topic, but also with other experience we did also overseas, that we saw a lot of acceleration and value added using low-code and no-code technologies. If you think about, and we have seen a lot of this in these days, the use of this modern and application design and development by using visual help. You just need people to design the flow and understand the business need, and the rest will be done by the AI and machine learning embedded in the platform. That is not the only thing. We have done a lot of business process automation. And so all these things are very much used to avoid the need of spending a lot of time on writing code for doing these things and very much focus on designing the right process that need to be implemented. This was very well observed with the journey with TopBuild. So we met the business, we understood them. We're still in the learning phase, because anytime we meet them, we discover something new, right? So, which is nice. I mean, we spent almost a week with them recently, and understanding the way in which the daily business is done for us is a mean to transform that into the next process, into the application, which is the evolution that we just started now.
Right, and obviously in your team, having experience with no-code, I think sees it one way. I don't know if this was your first exposure to this type of technology or not. So. No, but I'd love to understand how it's versus other types of software you've deployed, if you've seen any, observed anything.
Well, I mean, I think just, I think Gianluca is being very polite and diplomatic to us. I think that one of the most important things about it being, at the time we started partnering, we were set, low code, and with your latest advancements, you guys are really going forward further into the no code. And so when we started the journey, I think one of the most important things about it is that we're still working through what is the business process, which, being very diplomatic and friendly to not point out that we didn't know what the hell we were trying to do in some regards, right? Because we have this very fragmented footprint and we value that. So we hadn't put a ton of focus into creating an approach, right? So because they didn't have to spend as much time on, I think, the coding structure, we could spend more time on redoing the business rules, right? Which is not the best way to do that for everybody out there. If you haven't implemented yet, try to, get that done in advance. But I think that it actually helped us to think through what the business needed in real time, and we didn't actually hurt ourselves too much because of the simplicity of the backend. In terms of how it relates to other types of softwares, I mean, I think it was in a very different context that, I have familiarity with other low-code, but I think we knew when we first started looking at it, and the rest of my team really hadn't had that experience. And I was able to say, this is gonna be, when we are ready to take it, it's gonna be much easier for us to manage this and drive this over time once we are totally complete with our business process, once we have all that field feedback. And I think Gianluca's point about spending time with us, we continue to experience feedback from our field users, which, by the way, we have 13,000 plus employees, and a large chunk of them are in the selling or servicing role. And again, that sort of fragmented footprint is what means that every time we are successful at motivating someone to leverage the tool, all of a sudden we get a new set of user feedback. And there's really no way around that. So this type of tool set allows us to kind of nimbly respond and be a lot more flexible to those and change things in a week or two, as opposed to 6-8 months of, we'll fit you into release 9 or whatever,
I don't know if you were here for the part, but I see, Andy stepped in and then stepped out, but Catherine had talked about our own usage of our deployment, and we internally and mentioned our account management. We were rolling out a new account management, and we had an MVP up in weeks, but then I was in another meeting later, and she already explained to somebody, but let me be clear, it's already on its 5th iteration. Right, so it's to your point of that. I think that's great. I'd like to ask you a question, if I may, that's not on the question. So we'll see if you're not comfortable or not. But I always want folks to get a specific example to open their minds. And one of the things that I love about being in this space is being able to help organizations lean into their differentiators and find ways to enhance and accelerate that. You shared with me at one point. One of the real advantages you have when you have this local presence is the ability to kind of outbid and outmaneuver even smaller players. So normally when you talk about getting that market share and being the behemoth, you end up inheriting all of this baggage that allows smaller organizations to outmaneuver you. If you're comfortable sharing it, I know we have growth organizations here. What are some of the ways that you're looking at this technology to help continue that competitive advantage to actually, I don't want to say crush the little guys, but essentially not let the upstart. So, when you think about banking, I see some other folks here, they're under threat from the small, nimble fintechs. They're under threat from these things, and I think you guys are looking at this if you're comfortable sharing, an interesting way to leverage the tech leverage the data that you have to allow that not to happen and to stay ahead?
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting question. My personal philosophy, and is that technology is not a means to an end in and of itself. Technology is a part of a broader strategic objective. And I think for the larger business out there, I've worked for several much larger businesses even than the one I'm at. And I think ultimately, culturally, we have a localized mindset. We really believe in, and partly because construction is an exceedingly local business. It's about local relationships, local individuals, local people purchasing, local people working. And so I think it actually is just a true and genuine, to leverage a Creatio word that we've heard about today, a genuine feature of our culture. So because of that, it causes us to choose tools that can fit into that, as opposed to us having to adjust how we actually are to a tool set in order to use it. And so I would say if, anybody out there is a larger organization, yes, the tool set is absolutely critical, but I think you have to partner that with your cultural intention to function that way, to actually be nimble, to actually try to be agile. We can all put things on PowerPoint and have a lot of great mission mantras, but it has to actually be part of your organizational fabric to then choose tools and actually be able to implement them. What I think is great about, the Creatio structure and the way that we work, with Reply is that we don't have to sort of hide from that quality. We're able to be fast. In fact, they want us to be faster even. And I think that, it helps us to sort of lean into that part of our DNA as opposed to feeling kind of trapped by a more structured, software platform that could be fantastic if you use it exactly as it's expected to be used. And that's just not real life. It's certainly not real life in the construction world, in the field, when we are much more focused on safety every single day. Of 13,000 people, we're on 16,000 job sites every single day. We're much more focused on that. We're much more focused on, the well-being of those people, our, customers and their ability to get done what they need to get done, the people who are buying, the people who are, so we don't want to have to spend a lot of time, making it work with our software. And we really like that, between how Reply helps us to customize, and then once we take it over ourselves, the ability to kind of have it be less front of mind until we're ready to adjust it to the next level,
I do, and I really like within the culture, when you all acquire organizations, it's for a reason, and you don't immediately try to monolithically replace those values, what made them unique. You're looking more to enable it. So I imagine, Julie, for you and the team on a deployment side, that's a different layer of complexity, right? Being able to maintain the nuances of the different branches, divisions, regions, rather than trying to build a one monolithic structure that can apply to all.
It is. And I did like very much yesterday, Catherine said, each company now is a software company. Well, that is true, but then we as a system integrator know very well that then when we have to apply this into, and TopBuild is a very good example. So I prefer to think about that the software is an expression of business rather than a company is a software company, which is pretty much the same thing. The only difference is that the software will have to adapt to the need in a way that while the company is transforming itself into a software, because they use a lot of software. This lead up is just a small piece of a big bunch of software that I have seen at TopBuild. So we are trying to merge those two things and drive them just like all the other customers in a way that they embrace this software as a pervasive, support of the business process.
So what the dynamic with IT has been like? Yeah, we are everyday partners in a lot of different areas. This is a good example, and I see Joan from my team. Hello, Joan. This is a great example where for something that's an innovation project, we will kind of take the ownership for looking at identifying something, testing it, piloting it, trying to measure it, trying to determine, does this have scale potential? IT is absolutely our partner at the table, But if we're going to scale, we tend to hand things over to IT, and they really take over that giant scaling of critical business tools. And it makes a lot of sense. That keeps us, I've worked in innovation teams that are completely black box. I don't think that works great, because then you try to bring things into the organization and it's very difficult because no one knows what you're doing. And then I've seen, innovation teams that are the same as the core business team. And that's tough because you always get distracted by whatever the day-to-day focus is. So we're sort of in the middle. We tend to work alongside IT, but we have a bit of a separation of duties, and they focus a bit more on hardening, maintaining, scaling, and we focus a bit more on new niche, opportunities and testing those out.
Wonderful. Well, we'll be around a little bit afterwards. I think we're getting the hook. So first of all, I want to just have a big thank you to both Gianluca and Raman for joining us today. This has been amazing. And really always great to hear an actual customer experience. So thank you.
Thank you.